Hi, my name is Lyle Sopel. I'm a Jade and Gemstone artist, and you're here with me in my studio today, along with a few other people. So normally what I'm here with just by myself and my son Curtis doing the filming, but today we've got a crew. And we're here with the WeChat crew that are filming for WeChat. They want to do an interview style film of me, and we'll be doing that all day. So I'm challenged to be on film all day long today. And well, it's great. I really enjoy it. I love sharing what I do for a living. So today what I wanted to talk about was, first of all, how I lay out a sculpture into a stone. And I've chosen this piece here as a rough piece of jade that I'm going to lay the stone into. And a few other things about boosting your creativity and your mindset, and how to overcome difficulties that might come up in your creative process. So I'll get to all of that, but first of all I want to talk about this piece of jade that was mined by Cassiar Mining. And they found this in a riverbed, and as you can see, it's been naturally formed by water and maybe other minerals moving over top of it. Maybe it was formed like this from being under a glacier or something of that sort, but it has a lot of natural history to it, and you can see that in the form of the stone. So jade, being as hard as it is, it's not going to really change an awful lot whether it's been rolling in a river or under a glacier or whatever for many millions of years. But the surface will be worn away, and so this is what's happened here. The surface has been worn away, and you can see that it's green inside. And I've cut the top of it open here so you can see the coloration of the stone, and it's very, very beautiful, nice, rich green. So in this case, I decided that this should be a dragon. And I wanted to show the dragon coming out of the rock, so I don't disturb very much of this natural form of the stone, but also just keep the form of the dragon in the upper part of it. And that way I think I can get two effects of this dragon being born out of the jade and also keeping this natural beauty of the rough stone. So let me show you what I've designed here in the clay model. Now this is just a sketch. I either sketch in clay or I sketch with a pencil, but in this case I've sketched in clay. And so I've got the head the way I want it. I like the negative space, and I think it's going to be really exciting for the top part of that jade boulder. And I brought along a couple of other pieces also that are not so positive. I wanted to put it into the jade, but I think I put this featured piece a little too low in the jade. So I want to show you that, you know, I work back and forth with ideas. I don't necessarily know what I'm doing until I see what it is. And so I experiment. I try different designs, different angles, and different ways of looking at the same subject until I come up with something that I really like. And in this case, this is what I've got here, is the head rising out, and then these side panels here would be the rough stone. Now let me just demonstrate how I'm going to move this rough model into the jade. So first of all, I use calipers, and I use a means of measurement. So in this case, I know what the height of this rock is, and so I've made a model that's half the size of the rock. Exactly, half the size. So that's very convenient to be able to just take half size. And so I have calipers that will measure half size. And so in this case, I'm going to just say, measure the half size of this shoulder section of the dragon. And then what I'll do is I'll apply it to the area that's going to fit in. Right here. So here we have the original dimension, and now we have it here. So I can mark that here as the shoulder. So there I've got a good start. I know where one point is, and then I can imagine that the head section here is going to be up in this section. And the horn parts will be up in here. So the critical part is the measurement, is getting the piece in place. So from this point, I'm going to cut it. So I want to be very certain that I mark all the high points and the accurate dimensions of this piece on the stone. So we start with the basics. We know what the height is, and then we choose some inside dimensions here. So here we go. And I'm using a felt pen because I know that's not going to soak into the stone, and we'll be able to take that off later. So, and then that's the shoulder. So this whole section here on the top gives me the head in which I can put the open mouth, and then put the eye in here, and then work the horns up into this section. So you can kind of get an idea of how it's going to come about. So after I lay the measurements in, I'm going to take it to the saw and start cutting this away until I get to the form. And then continue with the measurements, the head length, where the eye is, how long the horn is, and then eventually start grinding it and putting the form in. But that's a long way to go. So this is the beginning, and I hope to be able to show you in future weeks the progress of how this is coming along. So feel free to come back in a few weeks with live Facebook, and I'll show you how it's progressing. So I have brought along a few other sculptures into the studio here that also show like an aggressive open mouth that I like to use as a reference to the form as I'm working it. So in this case, this is a lapis lion head with the jade teeth, gold eyes, tiger eye base. And that's helpful for me to see the open mouth and the aggression and kind of get the same feel of that kind of thing. So I like to have those kinds of things around as I work. So I do all of these kinds of things, the sketching and the reference back to my work in the past in order to boost my creativity. And I want to share 3 ideas or 3 actions that you can take as an artist to boost your creativity. So one of the most obvious things, I think, is to study. You can get a lot of great ideas from the internet and check out other artists, what they do and how they do it, and see how it applies to what you do as an artist and how you can adapt to that. So that's obvious. Your health is a really big thing. Like as an artist, you think, well, you just come into the studio and you do your thing, but you must have a clear mind. You must have a healthy outlook to life. So I think of myself really as kind of an athlete. As an artist, I'm kind of like an athlete. I'm working to keep my mind healthy. I'm working to keep my attitude up, and I eat well, and I don't drink too much, and I don't do drugs and all that kind of thing, so that I can keep a focus and stay open to creative ideas. Now, that wasn't always the case. As a young artist, my studio was kind of a public place, maybe a place where my friends would come out and hang out, and we would drink beer and talk about just life. And so I kind of felt like it had a two-way thing there. It was either social and creative. And I can tell you by looking back at that time in my life, it was about an 8-year period that I did not progress as an artist during that time frame. Where my studio was a social place, I could see that from the first year to the 8th year, I was still doing the same kind of art. I wasn't changing my motif, or I didn't have any more clients, and I didn't have higher values. I was just kind of like floating in that sort of realm. So at some point, I changed, and I decided that I want to move past that. And so that's what I did. So one of the things that's really also important is how to have a perfect day. Can you imagine having an ideal day in the studio? An ideal day in the studio is like if you had any way to experience your day in the studio, how would it be? How would you prefer your day to be? Now, I would imagine, having all the materials that I wanted to work on. I would imagine having all the tools available that I wanted. I could even imagine clients waiting at the door with money to buy my art, that kind of thing. And I'd imagine that I'd be comfortable and I'd not be bothered and that sort of thing. So if you imagine, this is a way to boost your creativity. If you could imagine just for one day of the week to have your perfect, ideal studio way to be, then put that together. Put that together. Choose one day, say Wednesday, and Wednesday is going to be my ideal day. I will have everything I want. You can plan it in advance. And then just work that day as if it's the ideal day of your career in your studio. So the outcome of doing that is that it imprints on the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind doesn't know if it's real or not real, and so what will happen is you will find ways to have more ideal days in your studio. And eventually, over time, you'll have the best week that you've ever had in your studio. So that's a great way to do it. Imagine the best day. And another thing about creativity and about boosting it and being more aware of it is to actually be aware of what happens in the creative process. So there's a thing called being in the flow, and I don't know, some of you may have heard this term or not, but being in the flow is like when you are completely involved in what you're doing. Like there's nothing else around you. You forget the time of day. You can't speak to anybody around you. You're not hungry. You're just completely absorbed in what you're doing. And I think that's probably the case for me as well. When I'm creative, I get lost in what I'm doing. And in that idea of being in the flow is where I think my best ideas come from. And my best experiences happen right there. So the idea is to be aware that even exists. And so I look for that. When I am creative, I want to be in the flow every single day, or every time I'm involved in a project, because that's when my best work happens. Another thing I want to talk about is the mindset. Now, the mindset of an artist is really understanding that you create for an audience. Like you think of a writer. A writer writes for a reader. An actor acts to be on stage. A painter paints to be viewed. Those kinds of things. Sculptors paint or create to be viewed. So that's really important to understand that you have an audience, and then it's not just creating for yourself, but you create for an audience. You create for a marketplace, could I say. I was listening to Brian Tracy. He's a great speaker, and he had this story about this interesting company that decided to make the best dog food in the world. And they had all kinds of science behind it, and they did all kinds of nutritional tests, and they went to great lengths and spent a lot of money designing this dog food that was to be the most nutritious and the best in the world for the dogs, best price, everything that they could ever think of to make ideal dog food. But when they put it out in the stores, they couldn't buy it. No one would buy it. So what they forgot to do is ask the dogs, because the dogs didn't like it. And so they missed the main point. And I think that's the same thing with creating art, that you have to know who it is that wants your art. Like, who is your audience? Who are the people that enjoy your work, and who are the people that really want to collect your art. Very important. You not only create for yourself, but you also create for that group of people. So you can do that by, visiting galleries, asking questions like, what's the most successful art in the gallery? You can ask questions of the people that view your art. What do you like? What part of this is interesting to you? And then you can incorporate that in your art. And so I know that sometimes when you understand that you have a marketplace and you think, well, the only marketplace I have is jewelry, or the only people that want to buy my art are people that like animal forms, or the only people that want to buy my art are people that like jade and not lapis, or they only want paintings. There's that aspect of putting perimeters on your art, like either in a marketplace or in your own way of looking at your art, can actually increase your creativity. So you can imagine that artists like Michelangelo did work for the Catholic Church, and his audience were the faithful. He didn't have expanded parameters. He worked within this tight framework, and he had to produce art that was for the church. So within those tight parameters he created the most fantastic art in the world. And he created for the faithful. And one of the best artists known to mankind. People like Pablo Picasso, he created some of his best work from during the Second World War, where he was, obsessed with the emotion of the war, and he wanted to share with the world how awful it was. And he chose the theme of a weeping woman and painted that one theme, that one image of a face and a weeping woman. He painted that 56 times, 56 different ways. So he put a self-imposed perimeter on his approach to the art. Like he wanted to just paint that one image of that one woman, and he did it so many different ways at so many different times. He didn't repeat the same thing. But that self-imposed perimeter is a way to be more creative, because you know your guidelines, you stick within that framework, and magic happens, actually. And you look at me, I've been an animal sculptor for almost 40 years. I've been working with animals, and I'm not bored. I love it. Every time I come to the studio, I'm excited about doing the things that I'm doing. And so that's my parameters. I chose that. I chose the animal wildlife theme as my approach to art. And within that, I've been extremely creative. So I think it's an important thing to look at as a creative person. So another thing I want to talk about is moving past discouragement. Now, every day can be discouraging. It's really about how you look at it. But I can remember a time when I was a young artist, I had an agent that worked for me, and I'd do some work, and I needed the rent paid every month. That was my biggest challenge, to produce and sell so that I could pay my rent. And my agent was my guy that would go out into the marketplace, and sometimes he'd sell enough of my work so that I could pay the rent, and other times he wouldn't. And I'd get so discouraged. It was like, wow, I did all this work for nothing. I didn't get enough money to pay my rent. So he always had a good comeback. He'd say, never stop working. Keep working. Keep producing the art. And that's what I always did. Because through keep working on the subject matter and the art, I got better. I didn't know anything about like this mindset that I'm talking about today, or choosing perimeters, or any of that kind of things that could boost my creativity. All I knew about was to be creative from myself and try to find a way that other people might enjoy it. So I kind of found my way through that and realized that if I didn't give up, I could be successful. So if there's one thing I have to pass on to you today, is never give up. Just never give up. Keep going, and success will come. So, thanks for listening to me today, and I really appreciate being with you. So, hopefully we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.